Finance meeting of February 7th, 2024. May I have a motion to enter into session?
Seconded.
Motion made by Rich Hawley. Can I have a second?
Second?
Keith Janetta?
We're not in executive session now, right?
We don't need a
I just
motion.
want, yeah, so the committee.
committee session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. In the interest of time, surprisingly, I have nothing to say, so I'm going to turn it over to John to begin with, and then I'm sure I'll have something to say after. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Rich. You hear me okay? So talking with Rich before the meeting, we thought we might do the capital budget first. There's some things we'd like to talk to you about. And then we have some things on the operating budget after that. This sounds okay. I have a handout. Excuse me because it's not all stapled, but I'm going to walk you through it. I think I have 14.
You'll see here. Yep.
That's some help if it was. Click them.
Thank you.
Just enough. Here. 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 That's good. So let me just point out the capital budgeting process. I think it's important to know. Like with businesses, our city does its capital budgeting separately from its operating budget. A lot of businesses do that, most other cities and towns. It travels on a very different path. Here, it does not even go through the finance department. It is collected, managed, and so forth by the planning board. And the planning director, Sharon Calidro, organizes it. She'll send out instructions in the fall, forms to use, things of that nature. And in the city charter, you've heard me mention that our operating budget is due to the mayor on February 15th. Also in the charter is the capital budget is due to the mayor on the same day, February 15th, and it comes out of the planning commission to get to him. Everything that goes to him ends up in, I've shown this before, the mayor's citywide budget. Includes most of the operating expenses, but there's a separate tab in there for the capital budget. And you'll see the different projects there. And what you'll also see in the capital budget is a multi-year capital budget, which is typical. Some projects will be funded in the first year, others maybe over a couple years. Maybe some are scheduled for the third year and so forth, but it's all laid out there. Those are the decisions that come out of the planning commission. And what happens is, once the projects are approved, they're financed one of two ways. They may take some and issue bonds to pay for them and try and match the life of the bond with the life of the asset. And if they decide to issue bonds, which our city does once a year, then principal and interest that's due the first year, that goes in the operating budget. And each year, there's principal and interest that's part of the operating budget. And what our city does, and a lot of others do, is as previous bonds are coming to term, or as that debt is coming off the balance sheet, they'll put new debt on to replace it, so that the amount of debt usually remains the same. And you see some of that with what they're doing. But what they also do is they don't bond everything. many years, they'll take some projects out and they'll just pay for them in the first year with budget money. So those are the decisions that get made after the projects come out as the city's trying to put their capital budget and the whole budget together, including their mill rate. And so what I've and by the way, the planning commission meets tonight at 7:30. You'll see their agenda in a second here. But what I've put in front of you, you'll recognize the first page. That's the capital budget that you, as a board, approved. Different projects, there's some bricks and mortar. I'm not going to go through all these. You're familiar. These came up through the sites committee to the full board where they were adopted. We've highlighted some of the security items that we had put in there. And on the second page, some of the technology items that had gone in. We talked about the Chromebooks a number of times, but here they were, what's going over there. There were some copiers in there. I won't go through each one. The capital budget this year, just to give you an idea, in the mayor's budget, is the requests were $3.2 million of requests. I think there was only one or two for us in here this year, but we've changed that by adopting a capital budget and submitting it. So here it is, and you can see we spread it out over a couple of years. That's the way they like to see it. There's some things that we didn't think needed to be done the first year, and it's really also up to them and through the city engineer. What do they think they need to do something right away, or can it wait, or is there another way to do things? So our recommendations for what year things are done in may change a little bit based on what they have going on. What I included next, you'll see an email exchange between myself and Sharon Calipro. I reminded her I wanted to be part of the kickoff meeting, get the instructions. We had done that a year ago. And you can see her response back to me. She's referring me to Antonio and Sean Hanley to develop the list and work with them. But you can see there in her words, the projects would then be subject to their review and approval. In other words, Antonio and Sean would see if they agree, and then they would submit them along with other projects. You see, I then referred it over to Mike because it was coming to you folks for approval. And then the next thing you do, here's their agenda for tonight. I thought you ought to see that because if you were to click on any of the links, you can see the projects that are coming out of the commission. The 1 year, the projects for next year, the 6-year plan. These are all in the format that appear in the mayor's budget book. And then they prepare a list of unfunded projects. As you can imagine, it's quite lengthy. And then this, as I said, goes to the mayor. He can accept it as is, reject it, change it, and so forth. That's going on tonight. But what they have, and it's the last page, is concerning because you can see there are 6 items for us. They're not the items we asked for. We're not quite sure where these came from, but I think it's something we should talk about. Now, I think we're trying to understand why our projects weren't considered, why they weren't even considered and rejected. They were not considered. Trying to find out the reasons for that. But I think the next steps, and we'll talk about, when we get to the operating budget, whether we want to include some of these items in the operating budget or not. But what I think we ought to consider is whether we want to bring our capital budget to the attention of the mayor himself. The fact that they didn't come to him from The planning commission, I don't think, means he cannot take a look at them. He has, according to the charter, until April 7th to present this book. So and he can add or subtract anything that comes from the commission, from other departments, certainly from us in our operating budget. So that's one suggestion I'd like to make, that we consider bringing it to his attention, and perhaps there are some items we want to put in our operating budget as well. So I don't know, Mike, anything you'd like to add or that?
John, when was this budget, when was the budget adopted, the capital budget from the board?
I think our board did it at their October meeting. It was due early November in the planning, it was due November 30th, I'm not sure. We did it, my recollection is about a week before it was due. Is that how you remember? Yeah.
And there's been no contact with the administration relative to accepting, denying, or discussing what was proposed or given to them?
I haven't,
Not officially, we've asked just some questions to say, hey, how's it looking, this sort of thing, but no official confirmation or projections of it.
So, I am of at least of the that somebody at the level superintendent or finance director, Mike's position, should get a hold of someone in City Hall. I don't know who, maybe start with Dan Garrett, I'm not sure. But, or maybe even start with Antonio, if that's who you furnished it to, and ask what happened to this. I mean, we're not in the habit of wasting our time and coming up with, you know, figures and things like that to be ignored. So I think this is a terrible insult, as far as I'm concerned, to us. And truthfully, I don't know, Michelle was talking about this the other day, about the $1 million, well, it's a total of, what, $4 million, but for the Chromebooks.
Well,
Right,
yes, that we're moving now to the capital budget, it's not in our operating.
Right.
Right, so,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, I mean, this, you know, we're looking for nickels and dimes, and we're looking to be prudent on a budget. But now we have to go through and evaluate the need for these Chromebooks, how it affects education, and then bump up a $178 million figure to something else. So I definitely think, this is my own personal opinion, that we need an answer to this as to why they ignored it. Maybe they have a different budget process or a different place they review it, but we need some information as to why we were not informed of this. To me, it just seems like you sent it somewhere and it wound up in the trash, and I find that very insulting.
Rich, may I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Following up to what Mr. Janelli was just saying, I mean, there are a few items that are on here that sort of correspond, but the numbers don't match at all. So when we worked up estimates on our end for these items on the budget, the capital budget, how did you guys go through that process to work up those numbers to provide to the planning department?
So with the buildings, so there's three portions. There's the buildings, the security, and the technology. So the security and technology are based on just estimates or quotes that we've gotten for specific things that we know we needed. Chromebooks, that's just math. Copiers, printers, the same. Buildings, some of these are based on existing estimates that we've had sort of laying around for a couple of years, and say it would be nice to finally get to that. Other of these are conversations we've had. For example, stadium lighting. We've been doing kind of kick the can repairs on that for the longest time. So we just know from discussions with the electric company, which is what the company that does the electric company, just roughly what that costs. So some of these have actual estimates that have been provided. Some of these are quotes that were in a file sitting there waiting for the right time. Another of these we just achieved mathematically because we know what one unit costs and we knew we needed X number.
May I ask one? I'm looking at like the Ellsworth Avenue School, the roof section replacement. We've got an estimate here for 200,000. They've got it down for 850,000. So I'm trying to reconcile, I'm sure you guys are doing the same, trying to reconcile, like, how did you
Yeah.
come up with such a large number?
There's no way you can do that. Yeah, I think it's impossible. It's crazy.
We have repair, they have replace, right?
They have replaced.
Yeah, we have repair.
Could I, Kara or Mike, how do we address the issue of the Chromebooks? As I recall, during COVID, we used some of those funds, right? When we closed the schools, we purchased Chromebooks. The computers, those computers, they have like a short life, 4 years, 5 years. But where do we stand at this point? Is this a replacement generally for all of the students? Are the Chromebooks at this point obsolete? And how does this not having this interfere with the educational process?
So I can respond to the Chromebook piece then if you want to.
Thank you. I mean, I am very concerned about the Chromebook component as well as the security and making sure that we're including that in our budget somewhere. You know, right now, you know, there's a breakage rate. You know, the kids are tough on the Chromebook, so we do go through some at certain grade levels more so than others. But, you know, the 4,000 is really just to, you know, I think we do in the 5th grade, refresh again, when the kids get to 9th grade, and they have that last Chromebook that they carries it through the high school. We've cut back a little bit on sort of the one-to-one laptops going home with the younger grades. That wasn't really necessary, so we have more stationary parts in some of the younger grades. But, you know, very quickly, you know, particularly around testing time, testing situations, we need to have guaranteed, up-to-date, ready to go, non-damaged laptops for testing. Almost all of our testing now is digital. Even the SAT has moved to a digital assessment. So making sure that we have enough laptops, Chromas, I should say, is extremely important. You know, we have found pockets here and there where we're able to pack away tuck money in technology. We've had a little bit of an alliance over time. I think we have a little bit with Title I. So we can find some pockets in grants, but going into next year, all those pockets are drying up as predictably with the budget situation that we're going to be in. So, you know, it will impact the way, you know, our expectations of students to work independently outside of school. There is an equity issue for students who wouldn't necessarily have access to their own laptop otherwise. So for our district in particular, with our population, having access to those Chromebooks is critical, in my opinion.
How much would you, if we had, let's say it comes back, the city said, but we're just not gonna give you any of this, whatever the reason is, and then it falls on us to have the burden to come up and provide these Chromebooks. In your best guess, what would you estimate that we would need in terms of the numbers or the dollar figure that we would have to add to our existing budget? Would it be the total that we have here projected out, or just a specific year? And then we try to work this in every year going forward.
I'll give it to Mike. He's worked closely with Gina on this. I have the number in my head, but Mike hasn't updated the number.
Yeah, there's a number of different scenarios. There's certain things we could do, like in the younger grades, just not allow take-home devices, which reduces breakage, which reduces spills, and a lot of the damage. So as Dr. Casimiro said, we refresh. They'll get a Chromebook in 1st grade, they get a refresh in 5th grade, and then a refresh in 9th grade, and then that carries on through high school. With the breakage, so that is essentially 3,000 books a year, right? One for each of those refresh grade levels. We've put in 4,000 here because that gives us the cushion that we need for breakage. You know, new students that arrive, old students that depart, maybe don't give the device back, or just, you know, general wear and tear. So by not having a take-home device that would improve the breakage situation. It would also just, have a Chromebook cart, and you'd be able to have some classes sharing. So there's a number of different scenarios we could work through to bring this number down. The other thing too is it's not like after 4 years these devices just stop turning on. They do work. There's just progressively fewer features that will work. Specifically with the data breach, there's certain security systems and software that need to run on these devices that just won't work on an older machine. So a lot of this is really just keeping up. Yes, will they be able to turn it on and do some math activities or reading activities? Yeah, for the most part. But to really keep the one-to-one device system strong and robust would require this number. So it would just start to chip away at that.
So, here it is, February 7th. We have an obligation on the 15th to have the document in. I think we have a meeting, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Cooper, on the 14th to adopt the budget. So, we pretty much have to put this to bed very quickly. And I guess what I'm asking is to instruct John as to whatever answer we get from the city, how much money would we have to increase the budget by? Would you be able to assess that between now and tomorrow and let us know, or do you have a number now that you could tell them?
I could let you know tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is, this is like the 11th hour, it's kind of criminal. We're looking for, I was going through this budget and trying to see, where it's overstated and stuff like that, and now I got a couple $1 million hole where we have to go from 178 to 180 millions, which I find crazy. But I tend to think first thing in the morning we need some answers as to where this is. Maybe there's a gift somewhere and they say they have another budget, you're going to get it. It's wishful thinking. I'd like to think I'm going to be 6'2" tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. I don't think this is going to happen either. Al?
I gotta say, I agree with the wear and tear. I have juniors in my class, they've had their laptop for 4.5 years, since COVID. And they're having problems logging on and getting information because of the wear and tear of the Chromebooks. And a lot of them have been replaced because Stanford believes on one-on-one throughout the school system. But yes, I think the 4,000 is a good, safe number, and I would be in favor of adding into the operating budget instead of the capital budget.
Are there any other?
Yeah, please.
I know Rich Hawley has.
Richard, but
Yeah, John, if you'd be kind enough, how does this single sheet from the capital budget 24-25 translate to your proposed budgets? I mean, within this, page 6 of 9 shows a total cost of $29.8 million, yet general fund capital expensed, I don't know if it's expensed or approved, is only 1.5.
Yeah, it's a couple $1 million difference.
No, that's $28 million difference.
Where are you looking?
On the separate page, this sheet right here, separate sheet.
Look at the first year, the 24-25.
I think he's
Compare
looking
what
at
we
the
asked
city.
for with what we decided to recommend.
Then perhaps I'm misreading this, but I'm reading it under the school's budget. We made a proposal, or there's a total cost estimate to replace exterior windows at various schools of $17 million. And the general fund capital, the number underneath that column is 100,000. What does that mean?
Okay, so we did not request 17 million. That has come up apparently through the engineering department.
Okay.
What we requested is the first sheet, and we asked for, we'll just talk about capital. Over the next 3 years, we asked for $5.6 million. Of that, we wanted 4.9, almost 5 million next year. And what they funded is $1 million something of different projects. The second column is what is going forward.
again, maybe it's my total confusion, I'm looking at even the second line, HVAC programs totaling $8 million. Whereas on the capital expenditure budget proposal, which I consider what we're looking at,
Yes.
only totals 1.05 million. That's a significant difference.
So, can I try to?
Sure.
This is what we wanted, and this is what the city decided we should have.
The planning commission.
The second column.
The second column is what the city decided.
But where is the larger number coming from? From our engineering department as far as what they actually truly needs? Where's
This is
that
what they-
where's that $8 million estimate for school HVAC programs coming from?
You don't want my answer.
Okay,
City engineer.
Yeah, it's the city engineer and the planning commission that came up with this proposal.
Right?
And I don't know what they took from our budget, because if you look at our budget,
Right.
our proposed list, we have window and blind replacement down for $1 million next year, right? And that's it. So they've made this decision, and that's where we started in the conversation. They've made a decision to fund projects that we're not asking them to fund.
I don't
Right.
think they gave any consideration to this. I think that comes from I tend to think that came from the engineering department, regardless of what we gave them.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, if that's the case, terrific.
That's my feeling.
Mr. Vanelli.
I could be-
I'm just looking at the link in the agenda, and they actually have a 6-year capital improvement program posted in that second link there. And some of these items, they've got funding numbers in 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. So they took the totals that were in your budget and spread them out over time, it looks like. But you only, this one's only 24, 25.
Right.
It's linked in the agenda. So it looks like some of these items are actually funded but spread over later years.
where do you see that?
It's in the link, so it's in this.
So this is just 1 year,
Yeah,
we're
this-
looking
Yeah,
at 3
so
years.
In this agenda, I just linked, press the link on my laptop, and you can see a link to multiple years. They've posted it, and it's like a 6-year plan, so some of these things are spread out over 6 years.
But no technology.
May I ask another?
Ugh.
I don't
Okay,
know that here, but it's strange how. it's
Okay.
done.
So can I just ask then, are there, what other projects that are on our capital budget request do you feel are urgent, that are not reflected in what the capital budget is for the city?
For next year, for next year.
So we did an exercise of just trying to identify what we felt were the most critical needs. The top ones, and for those of you who were on sites in the fall, you probably heard us talking a lot about the HVAC grant. We have an opportunity to get a HVAC grant, but in order to qualify for it, we have to demonstrate that we have our share of that shared grant. So we have to be able to put up, on $1 million project, we have to be able to put up about $350,000 to get the balance of that $650 back. So we prioritize HVAC projects to make sure we don't miss out on the opportunity to collect that money back from the state. Since this is work that we need to have done anyway, we might as well get a reimbursement on it. The other ones we had here as high priority were walls at KSP. We feel that that's a learning issue, but also a safety and security issue. There was a soffits on the entranceway at MRP, which actually I think made the list here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And we had a number of vestibules. I think we had one vestibule per year. Yeah, security vestibules, 50,000, depending on the school and the way it's designed. It could be either 1 or 2, depending on how complicated it was to install. So we felt those were the highest priority items.
In addition to the Chromebook,
Mr. Hawley, do you have a question? Yeah.
It's the chair.
Well, the chair's asking a question and we, everybody else is talking, so, do you want me to run the meeting, Mr. Danelli, or you?
no, let me, I asked the question. In addition to the items, Mike, that you pointed out, are we also looking to have the Chromebooks added?
Yeah, and I did want to point this out is, so what we're looking at here, the schools don't have their own line item really. This little schools thing, section here is a subsection of public buildings. So when it comes to things like technology, there's another page in here where it shows city IT department. And there's some numbers in there that if I'm optimistic, I could say they crosswalk to some of their requests in here, but they're sort of tucked into larger IT things, so it's not clear to me if maybe that is part of a Chromebook refresh. We haven't received that clarity yet, so maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but that's one of the first questions I would ask when we reach out to the mayor's office tomorrow for clarity on this.
Go ahead, Richard.
I'd like to make a motion on part of the Finance Committee to approve John's request for $7.9 million and to move it forward to an action item for next week's general meeting.
For the 24th. You want to add?
7.9.
Yeah, say it again, how do you want?
So I'd like to make a motion that the Finance Committee approve John's proposal for capital expenditures of $7.9 million and to move that to an action item for review with the entire council next Wednesday for approval prior to the 15th when it's due.
Again, if the council doesn't have a capital budget and they're not gonna give it to us, we still are faced with the issue of incorporating some of this, a lot of this, into our operating budget. And we don't have, again, time's against us. So.
Point of order, there's a motion on the floor, and if no one seconded the motion, if I'm not mistaken, Kim, the motion is dead. You're having discussion. No one seconded the motion.
All right, so somebody second, so we can have,
Needs to come from the Finance Committee.
does somebody want to second this motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Okay. Is there a discussion on this? So, yes. How do you propose that in the time frame that we have to put this budget to bed, that we get these questions answered and figure out how much more we have to incorporate into the operating budget from this capital budget once we understand what's happening?
Unfortunately, I feel that the time is of the essence.
I can't do it. He's the
That
chair.
we need to honestly move on to an operating budget, which is much more severe or critical at this venture. We're talking about whether or not to pull the $1.2 million out. So if you'd like me to amend the motion to say, okay, our capital budget is now 6.7 million, and we slide that 1.2 into the operating budget, I'll be more than happy to. But we honestly need to move on to the operating budget, which, as I said, is much more, in my opinion, much more critical and crucial.
I agree, and I was getting there, except.
Do you mind if I jump in for just a second here? I just want to clarify, Mr. Hawley, when you made that motion, you're talking about delivering this to council, is that correct?
No, I would imagine it's got to go to the entire board
For a vote to go
for
to
approval.
council?
But what I'm stating is, as a member of the Finance Committee, I feel the Finance Committee should approve it as issued, 7.9 million, and then bring it to the entire board next Wednesday as an action item for approval, so that John can then present it to the common council as well as the mayor on the 15th as to when it's due.
As a separate,
Separate and distinctive from the operational budget. Because as he mentioned,
So-
there's two separate issues we're speaking about tonight.
so what he opened the meeting talking about though was the process for getting this information to go through council, and that this had to be submitted prior to the planning commission, and now the planning commission has taken a look at this information that we sent over to them and dumped out their version of what they think our plan should look like. So I don't, are you suggesting that we submit a separate capital request to the council? I don't know if we can do that.
And if John can clarify, as I was to understand it from him, he needs to put together two budgets to the mayor and common council on 2/15. The capital budget as well as the operational budget. Is that
No.
correct?
Well, both budgets are due on February 15th. The operating budget comes from us, the Board of Education. The capital budget comes from the Planning Commission. I think this board did approve the $7.9 million at its October meeting as its capital budget. So I think, am I hearing you say there should be another action of sorts?
Then,
In addition, I think.
then if that was approved, why are we discussing it now?
Because we have an item on there of the Chromebooks that we're not sure whether we're gonna be funded for them, and it appears that we need these Chromebooks in order to operate for testing and for other reasons. And then it becomes an issue for us whether we take this Chromebook figure, whatever it is, and add it to our operating budget. I think that's one of that's the issue I'm trying to get out. Capital budget, I think, is already done and finished. It's just, I am thinking that we're not gonna be given the monies for the Chromebook, and it appears that we need it, so we're gonna have to fund it out of our operational budget. Is that,
So let's discuss the operation.
yeah, well, it would have to be in discussion of the operational budget, what items from here are we gonna increase the operational budget by that we feel is important? That's what I was trying to get at and understand.
Mr. Kennelly, I think Kara has a number for us.
Kara?
So this is kind of on the spot, but the things that we can't do, there's a couple things on this list that we can't do without, that meet our safety. I'll come back to security in a second, and maybe I can speak to that. But I have been texting back and forth with Gina on sort of the bare minimum threshold that you can get away with. And it's not ideal. It would mean for the most part, a lot of our kids who K-8 and back having kids on the park. We keep most of the books in school, but those ninth graders need to be refreshed. And then there's breakage, and you have to ensure that you have enough for testing. So we can get away with 2,000 for that, and that cost would come down to 750,000 at $375 a piece. Teacher laptops are critical, our teacher laptops are falling apart. Those are, that would say, the copiers could come down to 500,000. Per Gina, she thinks that's a safe estimate, and that Mike, I'd ask you to confirm, John. VoIP transition should get delayed, but cybersecurity should not. Website rebuild gets delayed. So that number there is $1,525,000. When you go on the front page, we have a terrible issue with our cell phones reaching certain schools. That's a safety issue. So sometimes we have dead zones at a few of our schools. So we wanted to have some boosters. Those are important. So I think everything that's the boosters, the cell phone boosters, the radio boosters, and the Raptor emergency would go. That total number would be $1,860,000. That would be the number I would put forward, and probably the elevator at Rogers Park. It's not already on that other list.
So the 1,800,000, is that a total, or is that just
Yeah,
one?
$1,860,000. So that would include the cell phone boosters, the radio boosters, the Raptor emergency, student Chromebook refresh, but at 2,000 instead of 4,000. The middle school teacher device refresh, a reduced copier printer. So, you know, we would refresh less copiers, but have some, at least one in their building. Pause the VoIP transition. Maintain Sentinel Cyber One security and pause the DHS rebuild. That would be my suggestion to move this forward.
So then, can I make a suggestion and correct your motion, Richard, that this board make a motion to recommend that we increase the operating budget to the total of $1.8 million as detailed to be provided with what you just listed off?
I'll make a
Would that be
motion.
correct?
Second.
And then Karen, you'll give John the details, and that will supplement the motion and the details, so we can incorporate that into the budget.
Yes, you feel comfortable with that,
Yeah,
John?
I have it.
Kate, second the motion?
I made the motion, Richard Hawley seconded.
Second.
Second, okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and it stands. Any discussions or no?
Can I ask one question as not a committee
Yeah.
member? The items that the city thought we should do, how do we find out where these came from? What the thought process, like, how do we find out what their thought process is and why? When, as the Board of Ed, you guys know what we need and we've already discussed it. So how do we make these line up and now we need more money in our budget that we're coming at them with? Like, how does this make sense to anybody?
I think one of the first calls would be to the planning commission. This is their document, the director's office, and they can lead us the right place, I'm sure.
Okay, and then you could get that information back to us,
Yes?
because this is just insane.
Nice.
Isn't Sharon Calitro leaving soon?
She's retiring, I think, in a week or two or something.
Yeah, I mean, did they have a person on board yet?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
All right, John.
Operating budget? Sure. Just want to make sure.
Makes no sense, does it? You can see what your list is. It's like,
3, 10, 4, 5.
it's fun.
And one more.
There's some information I'd like to walk through. The, couple things. Incidentally, inside the jacket there, you'll see I call it a scorecard. And what we could probably do is write it, it's designed to help us add, subtract, keep the superintendent's budget the same, whatever we'd like to do. I've taken some liberties to put some things in here, but I think we just took care of the last item on the list, the capital equipment, so we could write in on there, 1,860,000. And see where it leads us to.
What page?
Inside the yellow,
Yeah, that one.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So, in talking with Mr. Janelli before the meeting, just a couple things we'd like to make sure to cover. One is, we ran out of time in our last meeting to go over the questions and answers from the previous meeting, so I'd like to walk through those fairly briefly. We've gotten a recent report from our healthcare consultants, Gallagher. I've done some work with that. I'd like to talk about that. You can also see their report in here. There's an analysis page as well. I'd like to talk about, and some information about ESSER 3. It's expiring that we haven't given you. So just get started. You should recognize these questions. I think the first one had come from Michelle. We had a couple different numbers in our presentation, our slide presentation when we made it. One number was the January enrollment. The other number was the October 1st enrollment. It's very different. So I just pointed out that one of the things I've heard is that January number can come down gradually in the next couple of months, so it's been our historical experience. We also, and I've used the same, either I've tried to answer the question with in a paragraph or so, or I've attached an exhibit. So I came back with it. I'm using the same method we've used a couple of times so far. Exhibit 1, which actually is 2 pages, one of the suggestions was to add the total to that exhibit. Those are the drivers. We talked about enough times the 18 million, you see the total right there on the end of exhibit 1. And then on exhibit 2, we were asked to put a subtotal of the new positions that are in the drivers. So you can see the 104 right there. I've broken it down. Well, you've seen the sheet before by location. But it has what's new on this one is the projected cost at each school. So, for example, at the high school, you see the $1,881,000 I call the subtotal. That subtotal was not on the sheet when you got it the first time. That's a change. We were asked about the magnet school enrollment. This Exhibit 3 was put together before we were finished with the application process. So if you recall at the last meeting, we had a handout that recommended a change in the subsidy. So this information on Exhibit 3 is already outdated, but at the time we were answering the question, it was based on what we had, and it was based on a lottery that wasn't finished. So we'll skip over that. I was asked about the other positions in the mayor's budget book. I forget who asked about that. You can see a description of those on Exhibit 4. Just listed the titles. That's question 4. Okay, question 5. That was probably one of the more interesting ones. Remember, that's one I couldn't answer at all. I didn't have an idea when it came up. You were looking at a slide about the grants, and in that slide, we had $40 or $50 million grants. We had shown the major objects, remember salaries, benefits, and so on and so forth. There's a big number there for dues and fees, $3 million. And what it actually is, it's not dues or fees, but it's what we put there. And if you look at Exhibit 5, the dues and fees is really the wrong label. It really should, the description is things that don't belong in one of the other categories. The way our software works, it just collects it up and calls it dues and fees. But what you see there on Exhibit 5, those are payments that we make to predominantly preschools and other programs. You know, many times when you accept a state grant, Title I is a good example, as a condition for accepting that grant, because you're the public school, there's other parts of that. There might be a part for non-public schools or something else, and you have to be the fiduciary for those funds as well. And that's what these things are. These are really just pass-through payments that are, we can see who they are, YMCA, Head Start, Little People, and so on. And it balances to that $3,106,000 that we had up on the slide. Let's see. The budget presentation, a number of good suggestions that you made about our slides. We've made all those suggestions. Next time we present it to you, we'll show you one of which was there were a couple cases where a narrative would have helped a reader to look at it, so we put some of those in. Some of the other small changes that we made, they've all been worked into the book. I just mentioned it here. Really as a way, we heard each one of them and did something about it. The cliff page came up, I explained that. That was our projection a year ago, what we're calling a cliff page, that colorful page. And the reason it's different now is a year has passed. We have more actual data known, we have better estimates, we're closer to the finish line. We know a lot more now what it's going to look like on June 30th than we did a year ago. So they really are separate estimates.
Excuse me, what exhibit is that?
I answered that in a narrative. Remember the page in our book last year, it had the 2 or 3 columns, it said the cliff right at the top, it was different colors. And what we were estimating for next year is different than what we're estimating now. And when we went back to look, that's really the reason. They were done at different times, a year apart. Okay. Okay, the technology improvement, that's an important one. Exhibit 6 in your package breaks out exactly what that 785 is for. You can see some of the things, it's, a lot of it is infrastructure, some training, Wi-Fi improvements. I won't go through each and one of those. If you'd like to, I'm sure Dr. Seeley could help us with that. But that's how that's accumulated. There's also a question, there's not an exhibit, about the per pupil spending amounts that we have. We had a couple discussions on what they were, what they've been reduced to. And we were asked if we could take another look at that, the amounts that we thought would get us through. And I put a couple thoughts there. One, it wasn't, I think, real obvious that many of the school supplies that go into our classrooms come from the Curriculum Resource Center. They have their budgets as well. We've done that for many years. These pupil allocations are in addition to those, and they're really, I gave some examples. They're for things that are unanticipated or discretionary. They go along with the day-to-day running of a building. At the high school, it pays for graduation. We have a base allocation for interscholastic sports, and that wouldn't come from the CRC. Maybe if we have to replace some desks and chairs in the classrooms, would come out of that. Maybe things at the end of the year, if there's a school assembly or field day, building staff development, maybe there could be some expenses there. So it's those kind of things that go into that. And I point out that the per pupil amounts are the same by level. So all the elementary schools get the same amount per pupil, but different enrollments, so that drives the amount up and down. We finance the middle schools at equal per pupil amounts, different than the elementary amounts, because it's a little more expensive to run a middle school than elementary school. Some of the things they have to buy. And same with the high school. It's a little higher than the middle schools. That amount is also what we give to ACE, same as we give to the high school. And then the final question had to do with the state federal grants. And so what you'll see beginning on page 7, I'm sorry,
Exhibit 8.
Base allocation. Exhibit 8. Exhibit 8 at the top says grant other breakout. And there you see all of our grants, all 46 of them. Remember in some of the slides we were showing you the major ones, but then we were showing everything else. I think we called all other grants and grouped them all together. So here's everything, 1 through 46. And then what we also tried to do on Exhibit 8A is tell you a little bit about what each one is for. It's just a thumbnail, it's not a lot, but it gives you an idea. I think one of the points we're trying to make is they really are for special purposes, depending what they are. They can be quite varied, as you'll see as you go down through the list. So those are the questions we picked up from the meeting. Anything further to this, or keep moving along? Mr. Janelli?
Nope. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Juanita?
Looking at Exhibit 7, and I believe it's 7A.
Yes,
7A. Okay. And so these amounts are for next school year,
They are.
24, 25?
They are. They're the decisions that the principals made as to how they would spread out their per pupil amounts.
Correct. And based on expected numbers?
Right, so we looked at our demographer's report and multiply that by the per pupil.
And so on Exhibit 7, the third page, where we have reach,
Yeah,
and you have a total of 12,
correct.
is that because that's the number so far for this year?
No, that's what we thought a year ago at this time would be the enrollment there.
Is that reach and Endeavor?
It is. I think
1,050,
it's low, I think the projection was,
1,530?
that's how we put it together. I think in hindsight, it was a low estimate. It should have been higher from what I know.
And, Chair, can I just
Sure.
make a comment? Okay, and so, and I'm coming on, but from what I'm hearing, just last year alone, and I'm not sure if everybody went to Endeavor or Reach, that people sat in close to 30-something expulsions. Did I get that number right? 30-something expulsions? 30, and so again, I don't know if they all went to Reach or Endeavor, but to put down the number 12 for our total population for our middle schools and high school, I think is a low figure,
Much too low.
and would like to propose that going up. Do I need
Well, I
to
think
make a proposal to say, I'd like to look at one budget item and cut the, I'm just asking for protocol. One budget item, I'd like to reduce that and add it.
Well, I think I might look to Mr. Janelli to answer that
Oh,
one.
okay.
Unless you'd like me to.
If you're looking to adjust this,
I'm on Exhibit 7,
Yeah,
the third page.
basically interested in what a net change is. At this point, that's where my mind is going. So whatever you're recommending to John, if he feels that the numbers are, can be adjusted, then if there's a net change, then you can calculate what that net change is. We can figure that into the overall total. Right now, I'm looking for concepts and seeing what the net changes to this budget is, because I'd like to, again, sort of wrap this up and get a handle as to where we're going with
But-
these numbers.
Does anybody see that as reasonable? Maybe.
I don't know. I really don't have an opinion on that. I'd have to defer to John on that.
I just want to say, that 39 figure was for last year. So far this year doesn't seem to be on that same trajectory. Just my thoughts on that. It could change. But last year seemed to be the exception, not the normal.
Okay,
Kara's
Carol, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time seeing, so I apologize.
I do have a little bit of a solution for that without taking away from another school and their allocation and having to do everything through our CRC budget, because we do provide a lot of supplies. We can rectify that number to adjust that. So by having listed here, we can certainly make that arrangement with the administrative staff there to take care of the numbers of students who actually attend there through the CRC budget for next year. We can make that happen. It's not a large number, but it would be equivalent to the number, the per pupil number, without having to make a lot of changes to the other numbers.
Okay. Good. Okay, thanks.
I think, for the purposes of tonight though, I think, you're gonna get a lump sum appropriation for all intents and purposes, and how you choose to move it around in your budget is up to you, as long as you're not hitting things that are bricks and mortar or something like that. So Juanita, to your point, that if you wanna find an equivalent amount to take away from somewhere else to add to Reach Endeavor, I think that for the purposes of tonight, you can have a lump sum budget number and make those adjustments kind of as we go through the process, because you're gonna bump up against a time constraint here, is my opinion.
All right, John, go ahead.
Okay.
And then, can I, not as a committee member, but to Kim's point, that we're gonna get that lump sum, and we're probably not gonna be fully funded, and this is a conversation that I'm sure we've all been thinking about, so we're gonna need to have those conversations going forward, thank you, Kim, because we've had this little chat, but of where we're gonna make those cuts
Mhm.
and what is not gonna get funded. So that's also something, like, after we submit this to the city, we're not done. Like, the tough conversations happen after that.
Well, let's think positive, okay? John?
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna keep moving through our packet. You have in, behind the questions, you have something from Gallagher, that's our consultant. This was, well, it's their monthly overview. You've heard us tell you, we get reports from them each month. And coincidentally, Monday night, the report for the month ending December came in, and that's what I've copied for you here. I'm not gonna read through it all, but we met with them today, got their view of things as we do each month. And they were optimistic in one way, that they thought we would end up below the projection that they had given us a year ago. One thing I was encouraged to hear today was they felt that the experience we had last year, particularly last spring, was abnormal. We had a number of, a number more people in the high-cost area that were driving things up, and today the consultant even attributed that to, at the same time, there was a lack of care when people during COVID weren't going to the hospital. When they finally did start going back, they were further along, but we did not see that happening now, and it's February, so that was encouraging. And you can see by some of the comments here that he tells different ways that he sees us being under his projection a year ago, including dental, which is on the second page, and that was a line item we needed, helpfully pointed out, we needed to take another look at. It was budgeted too low. So what I did, they also do a 12-month average of what the claims have been. It's actually a 13-month look that they update each month. We pushed them a little bit today. They did not move off of the 5 to 6% estimate they had given us earlier. They said they did want to look at things later down the road, but they didn't come back with a higher number, they didn't come back with a lower number. So I think what we've had so far makes sense. So what I did was I went back and looked at the calculation again, and with better information, and took their 12-month accumulation, added the increase that they're recommending to the claims, then began to add in the other things that go into our estimate. For example, Cigna, our custodians, our Teamsters, their health insurance is through the Teamsters. That's not part of the Cigna analysis that you're seeing here. We had a good up-to-date look at what the Teamster payments were costing us. Put that in. We also have HRA and HSA contributions that are made as part of our self-insurance program. We'll look at that number again. What I did also was I looked at the drivers. Think of that drivers in that sheet that I showed you, all of the new positions that were coming in. I took a fresh look at that. We did the earlier estimate, we didn't have some of these drivers. Refreshed the employee contributions that employees make, which is significant. It's over $3 million that come in. Some other things. I think, well, the other part of this, you know, we're looking at the general fund and what gets paid with tax dollars. And we have, as you just saw, we have 46 grants, well over 100 people that are in grants. So part of the health insurance experience is picked up by the grants. It's not all for the general fund. So that the numbers you see from Cigna are not what we need in the general fund. Went back and looked, if you remember the green sheet that I used the other night, and we had the 12-page summary, including the health insurance line. And what we didn't talk about it, but there was a line item for health insurance there that would have, it was, I think I mentioned to you, this is our first real look at it last year. The health claims were under $24 million last year in the general fund, all things considered. $23,688,000 whenever all the dust settled. That amount is increased 6.4% for this year's budget. And what we're hearing is the projection that Gallagher makes, they're comfortable with that. And then that 6.4% increase this year is raised up 5.5% for next year. And that's what you see. But when we put all these changes in that I just talked about, the number actually came out a little lower. Now, I didn't cut it too close. One of the things that last month we talked about with Gallagher was they were asked, well, if you're saying our claims are going to go up 5.5%, what about the unfilled positions that we have? If those people come on, they'll have expenses too. And what we heard then was that a better number would be 6% if we wanted to consider the unfilled positions. So in the estimate that I've done today, I use 6%, not the 5.5, to allow for the vacant positions. When you put it all together, you'll see some differences. I put it on the scorecard here, where I think and yes, the dental was too low. I'm suggesting that we raise that by $300,000. But I'm also suggesting that we can lower the health insurance amount by about the same amount. You see the numbers here. Now, if you think it sounds like too much risk, we don't have to make what I think nets out to a $32,000 change. I don't, but the unknown really is all of the new positions and what's going to happen, what are their selections going to be. It's kind of hard to decide. So that's the health insurance.
So, Teresa,
Last year, this time, didn't we have a $12 million surplus? And then by the next month, it was gone?
The financial report that this committee gets each month did not have everything encumbered last year. There was a good 12 million that was unencumbered. Much of that was our health insurance, some was transportation. This year, as you look at it, this summer, what we do, we put into purchase orders and set aside. I like to think we've done a better job setting aside the things we know were going to happen. We were behind last year. That's why you saw 12 million.
Thank you.
anybody have any questions? Kate?
John, and I'm not sure if this question should go to you or to Kim. Can you guys just remind us how many unfilled positions we have, please?
So we have probably a handful left at this point of certified staff. Remember, we're right now filling those with overloads, a lot of them. But really, the tricky number, I think, is the tutor number, the para-tutor number. And that, we've got as many as 50. And those, remember, are generally the people who take the insurance, because those are folks that are low wage earners but take the insurance. So that's really the mystery number. So if we were to fill those, you're gonna drive up your number back to, of insurers, or what they call like belly buttons in the plan, and that number is gonna look a lot like it looked about a year ago, honestly. We've had a dip since then, so that's the concern.
Thank you.
John, and that's the thing I'm having trouble trying to quantify, is the bump from the 5.6%,
5.5 to 6.
to the other 0.5% going up to 6, and to Kim's point, which is really a guess because of a total population, you don't know how many are going to take the insurance, but.
Or what they're gonna take, single or family, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the risky part, and I think that's a reasonable question that somebody would ask us in preparing the budget, is to how did we account, for something like that. And that's why I have a reservation about reducing it to the 300,000, because I'd rather be more conservative and at least if you put the 300,000 back, at least we can say we've covered that particular concept. I don't know how to, yes, I can figure out maybe how to calculate a percentage of a new population, taking an average cost that's coming in and go through that calculation. But these, and to my friend here's comments, are big needle movers. And we mentioned last year, or it was mentioned last year, that one of the issues we had was health insurance that created the problem. Now, you stated just now the fact that that was an anomaly, and hopefully that was an anomaly. But you never know in health insurance, and I think with the amount of new positions we're hopefully looking to fill, we have to take that into account in the health insurance. Richard?
So, within your budget scorecard, do we have an estimate on the kindergarten age change as far as that expense is concerned, please?
Oh, we're just on health insurance still.
No, health insurance,
Okay,
we're gonna put it back.
but I just want to make sure that it doesn't go over that too. There's nothing more that has to be added to it. That's what I'm saying. Are you comfortable putting back, is the feeling, are we comfortable putting back the 300,000 that he wants to take out, or do we want to look to put it up? Do we think that's enough of a cushion to take into account what we're talking about on these unfilled positions?
I don't think it's enough.
Rich, I could add this, when, a month ago, I was basing my, it's such a hard thing that I based it simply on the comment that the consultant made, but I can tell you, from all the years I've done this, I thought, my first reaction was it was a little low. When he said, you're at 5.5, but if you fill the positions, it's 6. It felt low to me, but I'm relying on his comment that confuses things.
So, are we comfortable then with taking out the 331, let me put it that way, as a question to the committee members? Or do you want to leave in the 331, or how do you want to deal with this particular issue?
I would prefer to leave it in.
Leave in?
Leave in the 331 rather than take it as, showing it as a deduction on the budget scorecard.
Okay. I agree with that. I have a better comfort feeling with at least that. How about the other members?
Yeah, I'm
Same?
in agreement.
Teresa? Michelle? Okay, Al?
I'm not a city member of the committee.
Okay, I'm sorry. But I just,
Want me to?
you hear, and, yeah, as long as you hear, I give you respect of your comments. Okay, so let's do that,
Okay.
okay?
And Mr. Ginelli, we could either, I heard the kindergarten age thing come up, that's something I put on the scorecard today, we could do that next. I had two other things in the.
Yeah, let's
packet.
finish your list and then we'll go to Richards, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right?
Right, so you have, we have, given you the details, you have a page in your packet called ESSER 3. Those are the positions that make up the 6.7 million that you've seen on that spreadsheet. I thought it was important for you to see what was in there. And if, remember, we're expanding our messaging. I think I made the point the last time. We want to let people know that the lights on budget should include these people because they're here, they've been here for 2 or 3 years. And, but we hadn't shown you this, so I wanted you to have it. And then,
So John, if I may?
yeah,
So is that number that you show, is that all in? Is that inclusive of salaries and health benefits?
it is.
Okay.
And then the last thing in your packets, you have a sheet called the proposed budget comparison.
Hold on, John, pardon me. On your scorecard, let's complete that.
Okay, so I crossed out the health insurance.
Right.
We've added in some technology. Those are the only changes I've written down.
And the new item here, that you brought to the attention where I questioned, was the attrition.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped
Okay.
over that. Yes.
And that would be,
All right, $10,000 savings for 10 positions.
okay. And if I may ask, if somebody recalls, and maybe Kim can address this, is to prior years, as I'm going back, the numbers were greater. Now, times have changed. And so we have 10 positions versus what we had before. And we used to have a spread of 20 to 30,000. What's changed?
Yeah, so a couple of things have changed. First, what's changed is during and immediately coming out of COVID, we saw a lot of retirements. So a lot of people that when we went all remote, folks at that point who we might have seen retiring a year or two later than they did had retired. So we lost a lot of people during that time. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that what we're seeing, particularly in the shortage areas, like in special education, for example, is that we are retiring very, very senior teachers, but we can't find their replacements at the bottom of the scale like we could in some other areas. So it would be, for example, a teacher would retire at $100,000 and we would bring in their replacement at $50,000 for a $50,000 savings. Now it's entirely more likely that a teacher will retire at 100 and we're gonna spend 80 to 90 to get a new one in. So the delta has really shrunk. So those two things together led me to think that it was most conservative to take what normally we would budget at 15 to 16 retirements, drop it down to 10, and then reduce the delta down to 10 for $100,000. I think you'll do better than that, but it's really
It's a
hard to
gamble.
tell.
Yeah. So gone are the days where we have $800,000.
I'm not sure we ever had that one, yes. Yes.
Wishful thinking. All right, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the question so that at least we had the narrative and it's something somebody may ask. All right, John, thank you.
The last sheet I had is called the proposed budget comparison. It's, it was designed really to demonstrate that our operating budget, without the ESSER moving in, the increase is not high, item to item, year to year. So we're going to, at the next finance committee meeting, we're putting together a comparison of next year's budget, which we have in front of you, with what I'll call the expected actual this year, with the cuts we've made, some of the reallocations. We tried to have it for this afternoon, but there were so many different things going on. We didn't come up with a real clear way that was simple to show you that. I think we can, but we need a little more time. This was put together just as a comparison budget to budget. That's all, a general fund budget to general fund budget. So the first column, you'll recognize that, that's the ask, that's what the city council adopted, $150 million. And then what you've seen a couple times from us, this spreadsheet where we showed the different drivers going across. The second column was if we took just those line items, just those major objects, and with the different things we've done, different ways to project what it would come out. You saw the transportation calculation last time, special ed. You saw some of those different things going on depending what it was. And that, when you do that, that just next year, this year, the difference was 6.99%. But when you start to look at just the spending lines, and that's what I've put in the box in the fourth column, the differences add to 5.7 million. Now, one of the things in there, if you look at the chart, you can see the enrollment impact going down 4.2 million. Remember, that was what we're doing this year. Last year, the ESSER 2 was expiring. We isolated it, we put it on that line, and then next year, though, it's up in the salaries where it's belonged. Primarily, those were high school teachers. But the group is the same whether it was in that line or the other. And that whole group is going up 5.8%, 5.8 million almost. And that's an increase of 3.84%. You can see now, why are we saying 6.99? We don't have that savings built in again. So one of the points we tried to make early on was that our general fund budget is not going up a lot. The main reason I find is that the teacher contract is not going up a lot. You can, generally, what your teacher contract is going up, that's what your school budget's going up. And we have, I think, a GWI of 1.75%. Yes, there's steps on that, but that's very, very low, and that's the major thing going on in the budget. The other labor contracts are low too, and you saw the discussion we just had with health insurance, 5 or 6, that's not 8 or 9, and so that's all in there too. So, and that was important to show that it's really the things that are causing us to look for more money are in the general fund, are the ESSER 3 expiring and those other initiatives, particularly at the high school that we've talked about. So that's all this was for. Yes.
This is it. I'm confused on something. A few days ago, I had asked you, and you gave me the information on the $4.7 million
Right.
as to how you accounted for that from the budget of the 154 to the 150. And if I recall, just rough numbers, initially the administration came away with $1.8 million of adjustments, of which there is $900,000 or $1 million of that 1.8 that was transferred to the Alliance money, Alliance grant money.
Correct.
And the rest were, I think, unfilled positions that you took out, if I'm not mistaken. That you anticipated you weren't going to have any expenses for that.
Well, the difference was $3 million.
Well, but we're getting down, getting down
That was the
to.
ask that's the request in front of the city.
Right.
Still to be decided.
And let me finish. And so it was my understanding that the $3 million, you gave us a breakdown saying of the 3, 2.5 you had moved to other grants, some of which, if my memory serves me right, was use the expression or the example of Title I money where you might have had carryover funds that you, for excess you had to use, And so, of the 3 million, you parked 2.5 million in some grant money, or maybe the full 3 million, I'm not 100% sure. Now,
Correct.
I had asked a question at that time, I think it was last week. Was that 3 million coming back in the operating budget, or was it sustainable in those grants that you parked those expenses in for the coming year? And I thought you said, nope, they were self-sustaining in those grants, leaving me to believe and understand that the grants next year would be large enough to absorb what you put in there from the current year. But now, based on here, it seems like you're putting back into the operational budget the $4.7 million. Am I reading this correctly?
Well, I may not have been clear when I was asked the question before. I recall being asked, was it sustainable? I think was the word I was asked, the decisions were made. And when I answered in the affirmative, the positions that we moved to the Alliance grant are indeed sustainable, 900,000 some odd. The Alliance grant will continue for the foreseeable future. It will increase. We use the increase that we got this year for those positions, and those we expect to sustain. What we moved into to balance the budget this year and to use a couple grants to do that. One of the two grants was the ESSER 3 grant that's expiring. The sheet that you saw earlier, you'll notice that there are 8 vacant positions in there. Now, if we didn't do anything, that money would get returned to Hartford in June. So by taking some of our salaries out of the budget, put them in the grant, Hartford pays, that takes care of this year, but those positions are in next year's budget. And they're one of the drivers, that ESSER driver. We should probably stop calling it that, but that's where we're gonna pay for it. All the people that we have today and some of the vacants are budgeted next year in different places. Now, the other grant we looked to was the Title I carryover. So what that means is, if you have a Title I grant, it's for 12 months. But if you don't spend it all in 12 months, you can get permission to carry over the unspent amount for another 12 months. There was a few $100,000 in there that if we didn't do anything, would go back to Hartford. So that's the other place we look to balance the budget. So those two are really not sustainable, but everybody is in a place for next year in 178.
So, would I understand that in the operating budget, of that $4.7 million, all but 900,000, right, which stays where it is in Alliance, is that correct? Or did you take it out of Alliance and the whole 4.7 is somehow reallocated back to the ESSER as well as the current operating?
With one exception. The answer is yes, with one exception.
Yeah.
Part of the cuts were reductions in the per pupil spending, and we've kept those lower amounts for another year.
So essentially, all of the magic that you did last year, you're restoring back into the current year's operating budget through ESSER or increasing the so-called Heights On budget.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
know it's confusing.
Very confusing.
Terry's got
Teresa?
Is it possible to give a number of salaried employees full-time part, the total number for that $83 million, and then the 92, I mean, is it the same number going forward? You know, what is it, like 900 employees, full-time, part-time?
Well, one of the pages you saw earlier was the replica of the page that goes into the mayor's budget, if you remember, I forgot what it added up to. And what was not, what we also added to it for next year were 104 positions, which you see here. Those are all the general fund positions. Those are all that will be in the mayor's budget. That's what the property taxes pay for.
Well, no,
But the
I'm just
grants are
talking,
separate.
yeah, no, right, so I just want to know, what is the total number of employed people representing that 83 million and then carry forward to the 92? What are those figures? What is that figure? I want to know. We got 1,354 people in the system. You know, that, and then carried forward, it's going to be 1,450 people. You know, I just kind of want to, I want a number that, because
Okay.
that salary number seems to float every year. And it's hard to justify it without thinking the
Yeah.
number of who's employed. And I don't care, full
I
or
have it.
part-time, everything.
Okay. On the green page from last week, the column in the middle, FTE, full-time equivalent, you'll see 1,365.93. That's the number, but that includes 5 special ed positions that are in the driver. So as you look down the page, there's another 99 that are in that enrollment impact with the 5 special ed. There's your 104 that's in that page.
Well, and so the carry forward lights on, is that same number? From year to year, I'm just looking
So
for
the
year to
carry
year.
forward, and this is general fund,
Right.
not grants.
Right,
From the 1365, if you subtracted 5, that would be your number, general fund.
thank you.
John,
That, excuse me, Al, I forgot your name. John, that information is found here on our green sheet.
Yes.
That you gave us last year.
Yes, I didn't point it out, I probably should have.
Kate, did you have a question?
Talking money
Yeah.
instead of positions last time.
The new number, basically. I want to confirm the new number.
To the
Hold
chair,
on a sec, okay, yeah.
to the chairperson of the committee, finance committee, it's, we're running about 8:30.
Yeah, I just want to take care of Richard. He had a question
Okay,
that I deferred, and I think it should be acknowledged. He had a question on the pre-K or the kindergarten, Richard.
Correct, if I could, estimated cost in terms of the kindergarten age change?
Sure. So I spoke to Mr. Duchess, and the staffing is already in the current budget, as proposed, the staffing is there. There was one question though about the busing, the specialized busing, and whether or not you had already included that in this current ask. That was at $150,000, and then potential lease. So the staffing is in.
Okay.
The staffing is in. So Kelly did want to clarify just about the busing.
Busing, we're adding 4 home-to-school buses for high school students. They certainly could do pre-K runs after that.
I think these are specialized vans for the first pre-K.
Then they're not,
Then I would add 150,000 to that line
For buses.
for buses. And the lease is an unknown, that hasn't occurred yet, that's a potential.
Okay. So if I could, go ahead.
No, I'm ready to make my proposal, you go ahead.
Just to recap, the budget scorecard that John presented, the adjustments that I've noted that we're looking to do, and I just want to confirm it, is on the health insurance line, we're going to ignore the $331,000. We are going to add $1,860,000 to this budget for the Chromebooks and other capital items, technology with a list to be provided that backs this up. In addition, we're gonna add $150,000 for transportation for additional buses for the special ed situation. Is that correct? Is everybody?
Special ed or pre-K?
Pre-K.
It's pre-K.
Pre-K, I'm
They
sorry.
are specialized buses.
Yeah,
May I ask, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Are we also adding in the dental, or are we leaving the dental?
no, everything, it'll stay the same except the dental, we're gonna add in $299,000. So the only thing that's coming off the list would be the health insurance, basically, and that's a negative number. And we're gonna add $1,860,000, and we're gonna add
I'm sorry, we're
$150,000.
subtracting the health insurance?
No.
I thought we were leaving the health
I
insurance.
thought we were adding.
Oh, the health insurance, we decided it was $331,000.
Right, we're gonna leave it in, is that correct?
We're gonna
It was-
add
it was
299
originally-
for that.
John had subtracted it based on
Right,
this
right.
budget scorecard?
Mhm.
Okay. And we're leaving it in,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to the board, to the finance committee, that we approve a budget to send to the entire board of $181,674,579.
Is that, this adds up to
Second.
Correct.
Wait,
And allow me to explain. So if we look at the budget scorecard, take the top item, 178.9. We add in a 211. We leave the instructional improvement alone, so that stays within the budget as far as the operating. We keep the salary savings at 100,000 as far as retirement goes. We put back the 330 health, we put in the 300 dental, we put in 150 for kindergarten, and we put in 1.86 million for capital expenditure. Bottom line, 181,674,579. Do I have a second?
Yes, I did, but
May I ask one question? I'm not on the committee, so may I ask a question?
He's making a motion. I'm not sure that we have to
he
second
made the
motion,
motion,
then
he made the
discussion.
motion, I seconded it.
Yeah, oh, you
So,
did?
yeah,
Okay,
so
Kate seconded it.
discussion?
So discussion, okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that that number includes the 200,000, that 58% reduction in the magnet school that we were looking at
Yes.
last week? Is that in
Yeah,
here?
yes.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
What I-
yeah.
Thank you.
What I heard Mr. Hawley say is we're not gonna offset that for
Correct.
improvements.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Holly, could you just read your number again, the final number?
So if you start within the budget scorecard, we start at the 178.9. We leave the magnet school in at 211. We do not make any adjustment to the industrial and instructional improvement, so we don't take away 211. We do take away 100K for retirement. We leave the health insurance as is, conservative, so we put that 331 back in. We put the 299 dental in. We put $150,000 as far as the kindergarten or special ed transportation. And we put in an additional 1.86 million under capital equipment. So new proposed budget would be 181,674,579. Unless my calculator's wrong.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you said we put the health insurance back in, it hadn't come out. I'm only using the far right column. That was a proposal, but we decided not to do that.
Correct.
So I think what we're doing, are we not adding in the dental amount?
Yeah, he said,
Yeah.
I am adding the dental
He
amount,
said-
300K in.
yeah.
We don't need this.
It's noted here.
Right.
So, yeah.
That actually doesn't net to negative 32, it actually nets to an increase of 630.
Oh, right, it's this one here, right, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's,
No, I think what John's saying is you add the 299, but he never took the 330 out. So, but he never, what he did was he used the 330 to offset the 299 to get this. So what he's saying is you really just need to add in the 299 because he never took the 3 out. So
And-
your
and the
186
32,546.
would be $331,000 less. Yeah.
So, all right, yeah, let's do this because,
Are we adding the 32,546 from the dental back in? Because that's on the right-hand column as well.
John, let's just read down the numbers so it adds up, and we don't have, so
Now he's saying.
it's
The
178,
changes I have is we start with 178, 923, 145. We add 211,434.
Correct.
We take away $100,000. We add 299,416 for dental. We add 150,000 for pre-K buses. And we add 1,860,000 for technology equipment. That's what I've heard.
so that was the confusing part, was the health insurance.
Right.
And that, if you add that up, I didn't add it, that comes to Richard's number of 181?
Do I have a minute to check it? Just to make sure. Adding 2,428,850. 178, 923, 145. Actually, come up with a little less. I get 181, 443, 995.
so it's that 331,
That's the
it's that 331, which is tied into the top number of 178, so.
Did you take the
I
$100,000
did,
off?
yeah.
Yeah, he did. Okay. So what's the number, 181?
443,995.
I had 181, 330.
Yeah, but 150 for pre-K. I think we should do it again.
Okay, let's go, guys.
But they're
Yeah.
double checking.
Yeah, 999.
I'm going to do 181, 340.
It's not including this.
Yep.
It's 343.
Again, 181, 343, 995.
Okay, so let's do the motion. Go ahead, Richard.
So I'd like to make a motion to the Finance Committee that we bring forth to the entire Board of Education members a proposed budget of $181,343,995.
Okay. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Second by
434.
Kate. Are there any objections or any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that does it. So I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Richard, Juanita, second. I thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.